Alright, so we finally have the full kit info for Vivian, and she's looking to be pretty interesting and really good. So today I want to go over her full kit and overall value to see whether or not Vivian is going to be a character that you should be pulling for on your account. So let's start right here with the kit. She does have a lot to it, so I am going to try to explain it as best I can. But Vivian is our very first Ether Anomaly character in the game, which is super exciting to finally have some Ether coverage on the Anomaly front here. And I want to start out with Vivian's basic attacks, because in here we have some explanations for the resources that Vivian has, as well as some of her extra states that she has to, facilitate the way her gameplay works. Starting out with her normal basic attack, when you're not in any special state, it is a 4-hit combo, and once you hit the 4th hit of it, you're going to enter the Noblewoman state. Now, once you're in the Noblewoman state, you get a special basic attack here, and upon using this basic attack, you're going to gain 1 flight feather, which is the first of Vivian's 2 important resources, which they do also work together, so you definitely do want to keep that in mind as well and gain flight feathers wherever you can. When using the basic in the Noblewoman state, you are going to be invincible at the beginning, and if an enemy hits you, it is going to trigger a perfect dodge, and if you do trigger this perfect dodge, you're going to gain an additional flight feather. And you can also hold a max of 5 flight feathers at a time, so it is important to try to build up as many of those as you can. And upon using this basic in the Noblewoman state, if you have at least 1 flight feather on Vivian, you're going to enter the Fluttering Frog state, which for the simplicity of this, we are just going to call the floating state, because it's when she's floating in the air with her umbrella. And you can also cancel this effect to get more flight feathers before you go into the floating state. And to cancel, anytime when I say you can cancel a state or like cancel the transition to a state, it is going to be, from what the kit was saying, it's going to be holding down the dodge button. So that is also important depending on how many flight feathers you have at certain points in your gameplay. So now to go into the floating state here, this also has a basic attack of its own since you are in the air. When using this basic, you're going to convert all the flight feathers you have into guard feathers. So guard feathers, you also do have a max of 5 for them, and this resource is honestly more important than the flight feathers because this is what's going to enable Vivian to do a ton of damage and have a lot of value on these anomaly teams. So when you use the basic attack for the floating state, you are going to exit that state upon using it, and she kind of does like shoot her, not shoot, but like she shoots herself downwards with the umbrella. And when you swap out with Vivian, if you're in the floating state, you are also going to automatically trigger this basic attack to get her out of the air and also get all of your guard feathers up. So it is going to be very good there. Now you might be wondering, what are these guard feathers good for? Well, Vivian is actually able to trigger an off-field basic attack called Feather Bloom. Anytime any character on the team will hit an enemy with their EX special, Vivian is going to be able to consume 1 guard feather to deal some extra damage to them, which is going to be nice since it is ether damage. It should be able to also increase the anomaly buildup gauge on the enemy, so you can also build up ether anomaly as well with this. Now, I know I normally don't really talk about like dodges and assists for characters unless they really are important, but for Vivian, there are some extra ways for you to trigger the Noblewoman state and the floating state as well with these. So I did just want to go over them quickly here. For the Noblewoman state, if you use her dodge counter or quick assist, you can go into it, and then if you want to go directly into her floating state, you can also use the assist follow-up as well for that. So these are just some other ways to get into her states there, and also just important to know as well if you find yourself in situations where you have to use these for like defensive reasons, so you can try to make the most out of your gameplay. Then I'm just gonna glaze over her special attack here. It's really just doing damage and just has a high anti-interrupt level, nothing really too crazy on it mechanics wise. But then kind of just gonna lump the EX special, chain attack, and ultimate together here for the most part because they do give you some extra flight feathers as well. So the EX special, you're gonna get 3 flight feathers for using this, and upon using the EX special, you do have the ability to go into the floating state automatically, or if you hold down the dodge button, you'll actually go into the Noblewoman state, which I recommend doing that if you do need some extra flight feathers to get maxed out, because you want to have max flight feathers if you can before you swap them to guard feathers, so you can get the most out of Vivian. Then for the chain attack, you'll gain 2 flight feathers, and same thing, you can enter the floating state right after this, and same thing with the ultimate there, but this time you get 5 flight feathers back. So very good for ultimate, because you can just go ult right into the state, swap into another anomaly character, and then you're getting the full benefit of Feather Bloom there with that. Next up here, we have the core passive, which is another very important part of Vivian's gameplay, and honestly the big reason why she's able to do a ton of damage. Because a lot of the times, for what we were talking about so far, it just seemed like, alright, she's doing some damage here and there, but nothing's really like overpowering, right? But with the core passive here, whenever the Feather Bloom attack hits an enemy that has an attribute anomaly on them, you're going to trigger a bloom. Now, a bloom is going to trigger an extra instance of anomaly damage based on the anomaly that the enemy currently has. So even though Vivian is Ether, if you're running Jane, for example, and you trigger Assault, they're going to take an extra instance of Assault damage from this. And the damage scales as a percentage of the original anomaly damage based on Vivian's anomaly proficiency. Also for the core passive here, whenever the floating state's basic attack or the Feather Bloom attack hit an enemy that has an anomaly, it's going to apply Vivian's prophecy to them. And this state will last until the enemy is not suffering from any anomalies. And every 0.55 seconds, you're going to deal ether damage to them, regardless of if Vivian's on the field or not. And this damage can also build up the anomaly gauge, and from that you can activate the ether anomaly corruption as well as disorder if you're getting the corruption procs as you're getting procs with another anomaly character on your team. So this can be a really solid way to get some extra damage, not just from corruption and disorder, but then also pairing that with a bloom as well. You're getting a ton of damage from Vivian here. Then also, for her first appearance on the field, you are going to get 2 flight feathers as well. So getting that initial burst of damage by getting flight feathers from the other basic attacks leading up to converting them to guard feathers, you're also going to get some benefit from there at the very beginning. So that'll be very good for endgame as well. Then for her additional ability as the last part of her core kit here, the condition for activating it is having either another anomaly character or another ether character on the team. You're probably really only going to use her with Anomaly right now as opposed to some of the Ether characters. I mean, outside of Astriao, so you probably will get this more so with Anomaly allies. So when any ally applies an Anomaly with this additional ability, you're going to be able to consume a Guard Feather to trigger Feather Bloom as well. So now Feather Bloom is going to happen a lot more frequently because any anomalies that are triggered are also going to activate it. And in addition, with the additional ability up, you're going to get a 12% corrosion damage and disorder damage increase for any disorders that are caused by corrosion. So even more damage there for Vivian as well, and pairing that with a core passive, she's going to be putting up some numbers for sure. So now let's move on into her Mindscapes here. So for her M1, anytime you consume 4 guard feathers, you're going to gain 1 flight feather, which is going to make her kit a bit more consistent because you are getting a flight feather back for the next time you're going to convert all your flight feathers into guard feathers. So very good for just the flow of her kit there. And there's also going to be an extra 16% anomaly and disorder damage against any target that is under Vivian's prophecy. And this increase applies to any anomalies as well, so all of your allies will benefit from this. Then for Vivian's M2, you're going to get a 25% ether anomaly buildup rate increase, which is pretty good, especially since you do want to get the most out of the Vivian's prophecy damage as well. And you're also going to increase the base multiplier of a Bloom's damage to 130% of the original value, so just increasing your damage overall. And a Bloom is also going to ignore 15% of the enemy's resistances, so you'll get even more damage out of it. So Bloom gets way powerful once you get to M2. Then for M4, the floating state basic attack and the Feather Bloom attacks are guaranteed to crit. And upon hitting these, you're also going to get a 12% attack buff on Vivian for 12 seconds. And now, with M4, you get 5 guard feathers once you have her first appearance on the field, which is really good because now you don't have to lead with Vivian to get the guard feathers. You can honestly lead with your main DPS and just go right to work. So that is a pretty solid quality of life there as well. Then for M6, it's a bit of a mouthful, but you do get a 40% ether damage bonus. And you also will gain an additional flight feather whenever hitting enemies with the Noblewoman state's basic attack. You'll get an extra one when triggering perfect dodge during Noblewoman. And you will also get an extra flight feather when using the EX special. So now the EX special will give you 4 flight feathers, which is a really solid boost there. And anytime you launch the floating stage basic attack, you're going to now consume all guard feathers to have an increased range of attack, and is also going to trigger a special instance of a bloom. And each guard feather that's consumed is going to increase the damage multiplier for this bloom. So making sure you have all 5 is going to trigger some really insane damage there. But that is all the Mindscapes, so now let's move on to Vivian's overall value to see whether or not she's going to be a good fit for your account. So I think that Vivian is going to be a very strong anomaly character because she can work as both like an off-field and also kind of on-field as well if you do, try to use her that way, because I think she definitely has that kind of versatility. I also think she's going to work very well with a lot of anomaly DPS characters. I think especially the on-field one she's also going to work very well with, kind of like how Bernice does. But because she can do some stuff on-field as well, and she's not fully locked to being off-field, I think that she will probably have some depth that'll be explored by the player base, and could have some very interesting setups. Like, one that I really want to try out is both Bernice and Vivian together. So we'll see how that is once I get her on my account there. Now, on the topic of whether or not you should be pulling for her, obviously, if you like Vivian, you pull Vivian, right? But if you're looking at an overall value perspective, I think that if you use anomaly characters or like anomaly characters and want a strong upgrade for them, or just to start you on the right foot for anomaly characters, I think Vivian's going to be a very solid character to pull. And also if you like her playstyle, because she does have a few different like state changes, and you want to use her in specific situations with her resources. And I know some people may want like a simpler kind of gameplay, because I think Vivian's anomalies in general, just her overall gameplay, does have a level of depth to it. And it's not a bad thing if you want something that's more simple than that, because there are characters that do provide some more simple gameplay. I also think that if you're thinking about going for M0 with the W engine, I think the W engine's also a solid buff as well. You do get some extra anomaly buildup, and also some extra anomaly proficiency whenever you deal ether damage. But I think that if you're gonna go the extra mile to pull for even more on Vivian, I think both the W engine and M1 are both valid, but I think you might get a slightly bigger boost from the W engine. But I think that if you are not using anomaly characters, or you don't really like Vivian's playstyle and already have some strong anomaly characters, maybe you don't have to pull her. But I also think that her being ether is extremely valuable, because you're not going to get corruption anywhere else, probably for a while, because of how just scarce ether characters are, and she is the only ether anomaly right now. So I do think she has a very good amount of value, and I think that a lot of people who are focused on running anomaly, kind of like how I am for my account, I think Vivian is going to be a great character to pull for. But I'd love to hear what you all think in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed and want to see more content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that, everyone, I will see you all next time.